What's going on, motherfuckers? Welcome to the Crocs and Hot Pockets podcast. My name is Knackers, and today is Sunday, May 9th, 2021, and this episode number 149. Tonight on the show, returning with his big, bad, beautiful self, we got KickedTripod in the house. What's going on, man?
I love that my mom is probably in chat right now, and the first thing that she hears is, "What's up, motherfuckers?" She's going to love that.
I'm sorry, this is just who I am.
I told her ahead of time. So
good. Okay.
There will be swearing.
Even though I am unapologetically myself, if there's a reason to tone it down a little, like I will, but there's going to be parts where I don't have a filter and it's uncontrollable and I'll say something. Nope. But no, it's all gone.
No filters here, please.
Well, dude, it's awesome to see you. It's probably been a couple months, at least, since you've been on the podcast. Maybe even... Has it been a year? Has it been longer than that?
I don't know if it's been a year.
Okay.
A year. It's definitely been, though, like on the second half of a year, or like 6 to 12 months.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Good. That's
enough
enough time.
Yeah, it's been a while, for sure.
So a lot probably hasn't changed just because of the nature of the pandemic and such. But is there anything new worth talking about, allowed to talk about, other than anything in your personal life? You know, any different? Has hair started growing in places that it wasn't there before? You know, are your fingernails still the same color?
No, in fact, I'm losing it a little bit. Oh, I'm not ready to talk about it.
Dude. Well, if you ever need to talk about it, there's one person who knows a lot about hair loss. And that's me.
Not ready for it. I'm still holding on to what I have at the moment. But yeah, I think that's it. My wife and I started taking Japanese lessons at the San Jose Learning Center during COVID. So
that's right. Okay, I remember you talking about that.
So we finished the Genki 1 textbook, and our teacher says we're doing great, but we don't feel like we're doing very great all that often. But other than that, I mean, it's on my Twitter now. I'm at a new technology startup that's going to be making some technology solutions for content creators called Beacon. But I can't go into really much more detail than that at the moment, other than there's a Twitter there. We've tweeted like 2 times. And that's going to be the way it is for a while. But I'm there, and I'm really excited.
Okay, so I've only signed 2 NDAs in my entire life. And even though I've never been in a position to talk about the subject and break the NDA, I'm still nervous as fuck just 24/7. Like, it's today the day where I say something that slips up.
That I screw it up. Yeah. Well, the good news is the crew that we're with is pretty chill. Our lawyers aren't, but we're pretty chill. And yeah, I don't think that you're at risk of anything at this point. Okay. I think.
I'm not even gonna ask anything that goes near it. That's how far the fuck away I'm gonna stay. Because this is all new to me.
That's good.
I know that NDAs are one thing and embargoes are another. Are those kind of like the 2 main sworn to secrecy documents that kind of revolve around situations like this, where you're either in development of a product, or maybe if you're like a reviewer of a product? Are those like the 2 main things
that we send NDAs for?
Yeah. Not even just like you, but just in the business, like in general.
Yeah, I mean, you work with a lot of contractors and partners too, like creative partners and stuff, and they'll all be NDA as well, right? For people who need to, design your social media assets, put up your social pages, design your website, do your photography, your videography, all of that stuff. You're gonna have people on NDAs. But we pay them. We also pay them and NDA them. So it's like a double whammy.
I can't even imagine what the lawyer fees are like to maintain, right? You think about all of the introductory costs that go into running a business, and then you have like running a business in this type of space where literally everything is done online in the public eye. You have all these other companies that you kind of need to work with as well and work against. And I mean, there's a reason that they make so much fucking money, is because they take on things that I can't even comprehend.
Yeah, and honestly, in most cases, it's really weird because when you talk about intellectual property, you have such like a there's on like social media, there's such a self-serving opinion on it, whereas like if it's we're all about protecting intellectual property unless the company is a little bit bigger than we would like them to be, in which case then they should have no intellectual property because blah blah blah. And so it's weird, but for most companies, yes, lawyers are expensive, but they're really important to the complexity of protecting ideas, especially internationally, is not easy at all. And so it's something that you want somebody good at to be able to do, and that's what they're there for, I guess. So that's it. And I think it's relative, considering like a lot of people don't have like technology patents on things you think that they should have,
right?
Like people think that every novel idea is patented. It's really not. So there's just a lot of stuff out there. You're like, how has nobody patented that? How has nobody protected that in some way? And it's part of it's because they can't afford a lawyer. It's like, I have a good idea and I have no money to protect it. But other parts of it too.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say other parts of it too is just like, you have to know what is actually protectable. And you're like, oh yeah, this is a new novel application of something, but you can't protect it because of this reason, that reason, this law, that law. And
I also wonder if there's not a reason to attempt to patent something because there isn't any value in somebody else trying to patent it because of all of the other moving parts. Like there's a reason nobody else has come out with a trackpad like Apple has. Like there is a reason that the trackpad is the number one fucking trackpad in the world. And I'm sure that there's people that have tried to come near, but it's like, there's probably a lot of other complicated things we got to do. And like people are going to use a mouse anyways. So we'll let Apple have this and we'll just worry about our mice and shit.
Well, do you remember for a long time, there weren't Apple keyboards that were wireless and 10 key? Up until about 2013 or 2014, there was no first party Apple wireless 10 key.
That's right. Because they only had like the not even the TKL. Oh, I guess it's kind of a TKL with the super smashed arrow keys.
Yeah. So it was, I would call it a TKL. And so they had that up to 2013, 2014. And I can't corroborate this 100%, but the information I was told is because another company owned the intellectual property for an amount of time in doing that. And they couldn't actually put the 10 key on the end of it without having to pay money for it.
Wow.
But again, I can't corroborate that at all. Like I could just totally be talking out of my ass for the moment, but that's what I was told. That's what I was told. And I might just be dumb.
So that,
like, I believe that, Uncle Joe. Like,
right. That doesn't surprise me because up until 2018 or 2019, some Joe Schmo owned the patent for the ability to take a 1 terabyte hard drive and clone it and place it on a 500 gig hard drive. So like the technology or the code needed to facilitate that was held by somebody who was not willing to let it go. So like you would have all these different pieces of software of people trying to take large hard drives, like large mechanical hard drives, and then clone them to smaller SSDs. But that technology just wasn't available for a really, really long time. I think the patent expired, I think in 2018 and 2019. And since then, other softwares have caught up. That was always like a huge fucking stink. And some of the companies that still were able to do it, there was always like these really dumb catches like for being able to do it. It was never like a smooth, clean thing. So I 100% believe that because I believe that petty shit exists everywhere in the world.
Well, do you remember the Samsung v Apple cases back in the day? And one of the things, and it turned into an internet meme, and people make fun of it all the time, is Apple patenting rounded corners.
No.
So, and it's an oversimplification. So the people who are against Apple and this idea are like, oh, you just round, you can't be the only one to round corners, and they were, kind of like Apple's just, patenting everything, and that's what they do. And it's tough when you're a big company because if you don't patent stuff, you lose a lot of money. But the idea was, or the oversimplification was, Apple did it or tried to patent rounded corners, when in actuality what they did is they found a way to draw rounded corners like 10 times more efficiently than the competitors, and they patented the algorithm to draw those rounded corners on the screen to make them more efficient. And so people are like, Apple's trying to make sure that other icons don't have rounded corners. And they're like, no, we had an engineer come up with a way to make these corners more efficient on our screen. And that's insane. Is ours.
Wow. Because I was about to say, like, do you patent the angle of the rounded corner, like the distance, or do you want short corners? Do you want long rounded corners? But that
I think it's the method at which the corners are drawn. Essentially, it's like, but it's a little bit like patenting a math equation, which I don't know how that works. Like, I don't know if like Newton is getting royalties off of like his laws or whatever. Like he just is like still making bank on it. Newton's patented first law.
I wonder, there's got to be a Newton child somewhere, right? Or like it's super descendant family of that's got to be just raking in that money.
Well, and one of your viewers brings up a really good point. Says it's actually nearly impossible to patent a technical solution. They had great lawyers. Yes and no, because all you have to do is change that equation just a little bit, and it's then you have to like argue that equation or that algorithm is close enough to yours that you can still own it despite not patenting it. And that is something completely different and challenging in its own. So, I mean, if you look at Samsung or Google devices, there's rounded corners there.
Right.
And it's not like they don't run well. It's not like, every screen with a rounded corner just cuts down to like 4 frames a second. So, yeah. So, like, clearly they figured out some alternatives that were okay.
Right. I can't believe even though I've been a fan of Apple products for so long.
We share this.
Yeah.
You and me in the streaming industry, man, are one of the 2 people with microphones who, it isn't our collective interest to just all over Apple products. We're like, congrats on the Mac Mini, by the way.
Oh my God. I know you can't see it right now, but Jesus.
You're on you got the M1 one, right?
Yep.
Right?
Maxed out everything.
Is it sick?
Yep. I absolutely love it. The only issues that I'm having right now are there's certain random apps that just obviously aren't optimized well. Discord doesn't run well, and it's only with scrolling. Like sometimes you'll click onto Discord, making it the primary application, and there's this weird hesitation. I'm using a Logitech MX Master 3 right now for the.
Do you know if Discord is M1 optimized yet?
I don't think it's native yet. No, it's probably being emulated. I can't imagine, like, I would be really, really surprised if it already was. Like, I know Discord is a massive, massive company, but their development team, as far as developing for an entirely new program, I doubt they would have done that already.
Yeah, they usually, I notice now for most applications that have it, you have to like choose, do you have an Intel Mac or an M1 Mac? So I just kind of assume if I don't have the thing to specify that, then I don't have, then it's not M1 optimized. And they're doing that emulation, and the fact that they're still able to do it so well,
right,
is still mind-boggling to me.
It is. And you know what I just thought of? It's like, I don't know how much is actually dependent on the operating system, right? Because Discord's just running on Electron. It's basically a glorified Chrome tab that's running as an application. So there's got to be some optimization failures there. Actually, it just made me remember. I loaded up Twitch on my M1 yesterday, and I clicked on a VOD. The VOD loaded immediately. I started clicking in random parts around the VOD. Load, like immediate loading, clicking through an 8-hour VOD. Like, what the fuck is going on? I have never experienced Twitch to be so snappy. This wasn't in Safari. This was in Microsoft Edge on the M1 Mac, scrubbing through VODs like nothing. I was so fucking impressed. Like, you gotta be kidding me. Is this what it's like?
I want to know what backwoods part of your computer you're on to be running Microsoft Edge on your M1 Mac. That is the real enigma here.
I love Edge, man. I'm starting to become
really.
Yeah, I love it. So not only do I love the UI, I love that it's sync in between computers, like the browser syncing of history and bookmarks and extensions works flawlessly. It's faster than Chrome. Updates less than Chrome. Like it can't update less than Chrome, but I feel like it's way less in my face about updates than Chrome is, even though it's built on Chromium. So I've been using the Microsoft Edge beta.
Based on Chrome?
Yeah, it's Chromium. The newer one. So there was a Microsoft Edge beta that came out within the last year. I've been using it since beta, and it came out full release probably about 6 months ago. I've been using it ever since.
But you like Mac though, so that's okay.
Yeah, I fucking love it. So yeah, the entire system is amazing. I'm still getting used to Mac OS, right? Even though like I love Apple shit, I haven't been on Mac OS in a long time for a primary machine. There was something else that was kind of sticking out to me. Oh, being back on 60 hertz sucks. There was one of the
weird.
It was one of the downfalls of getting this monitor. But there weren't a lot of monitors that were 38-inch, ultra-wide, IPS, had a decent sRGB or Adobe RGB rating. I'm like, you know what? I could live with 60 hertz for now, and maybe we'll upgrade down the road.
I got to interrupt you for a second and shout out my mom in chat, Kim Probst over there. Hey, Mom, happy Mother's Day. You're the best. Thanks for everything.
Thank you for making this, man, and happy Mother's Day as well.
Chat, make sure to say happy Mother's Day to my mom.
Get on it, chat. So
so I'm waiting. I'm on a 2017 iMac Pro, like the one generation that they made of an iMac Pro. Got a great deal on it. I love it, but I'm waiting for Apple to come out with like the M2 or whatever, like the really truly desktop class. Like, not that the M1 isn't desktop class, because it totally is.
Right.
The M1 right now is kind of like a side grade to my 2017 like computer, which pisses me off because the price on those is way lower, right?
Yep.
So I'm like, I'm ready for the next generation, and then I think I'm going to upgrade from this.
Which is supposed to be sometime this year. I think it might even be late 2021 that they're announced, or at least teased. Right now, all the rumors are pointing to a similar announcement to where they talk about M1 and then they actually release probably sometime in 2022.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt they're coming. I'm sure that they've already got a lot. They're very far along in it. I don't know. I don't know. Are they going to refresh the iMacs again this year? Are they going to come out with another iMac Pro? Because if you notice, none of the iMacs come in a dark color.
Mm-hmm. That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking iMac Pro with an M1X or M2, which is probably going to be more of a performance hog of a chip dedicated for professionals, because the M1 for the everyday person is overkill. I mean, if you actually look at how that thing performs for creators and artists and musicians, and you put that power in the hand of just like an everyday person, thank you, I love you. I've never been on such a Tripod loves you too. I've never been on such a snappy OS. Like, obviously, when you first install Windows 10 on a PCIe SSD, right? It's like, oh my god! But this thing is going to stay this way, and that's what I'm most pumped for.
It does. It really does. Yeah, I haven't had. I love my Macs. I'll never go off of them.
Yeah, I'm in the transition phase. I know the hardest part is going to be finding apps that I use that like really obscure apps. Like I have an application called MP3 Tag, which lets me edit all of the ID3 information for MP3s. So like when I create a podcast MP3, I can change the artist, the title, the track number, the date. I can put comments in.
Finder.
Does Finder just do that natively?
You can right click, go into get info, and all that information is right there.
Fuck yeah. Well, see, that's going to be my biggest hurdle is all of the little intricacies that I know in Windows 10. I'm going to have to relearn over here. Like there was something,
I remember that.
Just that transition phase, but I'm excited for it nonetheless. So speaking of hardware, the last time we talked, you had a different wired headset and an RE20? 320.
Yep.
You had a 20.
RE20.
Okay, and now you're rocking a pair of luxury AirPods Max and a Shure SM7B, which you just had a fantastic YouTube video about as well.
Thank you.
So how's the new hardware? How are you liking it?
So AirPods Max, I did not pay full retail for them. So $550 is a lot for a headphone, just period. Even with, Apple pricing and all that kind of stuff. The thing I will say is I love Apple wireless headphones right now, especially their noise canceling ones because of spatial sound.
Mm-hmm.
Is the best movie experience I've ever had in my life.
Wow.
That's
best.
Saying
a lot.
It's
in wireless
so
mode?
good in wireless mode. And it's so because there's a few things that go on. It does it's very Dolby Atmos-esque in the audio emulation type stuff. I think that they're probably doing something, with their own spin on it, but they also can detect when you're using mobile devices, they can detect where your head and ear cups are in comparison to where your screen is. So it sounds like your front speakers are always coming from the screen, not from whatever, in front of wherever you're facing. They actually just come from the screen. And it's such a bizarre experience, but it's so great. They're really well tuned. Like the bass gets really beefy if you want it, but I mean, they're one of the most versatile sets of headphones I've ever used. I'm using their Lightning to 3.5 millimeter cable.
Okay.
Into an extender. And they've got a pretty decent digital to analog converter on it, and which Apple has always put in their cables. It's like in the audiophile community, the best mobile DACs are that aren't hundreds of dollars, are the Apple Lightning to 3.5 millimeter DACs for some reason. They just do a really great job. They preserve the audio really well.
Okay.
And
are you talking about this little guy right here? Sorry, this little guy?
Yes, that was the first one. This is a very different one that they came out specifically with the AirPods Max, but
there's some Sugru on this one, chat, which is why it's got some orange shit on it. But interesting, because it doesn't feel like there's anything inside of here.
Exactly, and I don't know the technical reasons as to why, but it's like one of those things where Apple's best little universal crowning achievements are in just little random crap like that, where they're not going to sell more iPhones because of it. They're not going to sell more headphones because of it. But if more people knew about it, they'd be using them with their iPhones for wired headphones rather than trying to go get save the $10 on the Belkin one. Cause they're also $29 or $34, which isn't cheap. But when you consider the quality difference for a Belkin, which is going to be 15 to 20, right, might be worth it.
Interesting. I'm gonna have to do some digging on that because I didn't think that those were all that special, and I think that little adapter is $15. I don't think it's all that expensive. I know the one for the one that you have, that long cable is what,
yeah.
$40 bucks, $45,
35. I can't remember. Again,
okay.
I don't pay full price for my Apple product.
This is right. Which is awesome in itself because
I rob Apple stores.
Hi, come and get me. If there's one thing that's better than Apple, getting an Apple product, it's getting an Apple product at a discounted price because it just doesn't fucking happen.
Yeah. And a new one with all the warranties and stuff. I've always had this thing where I feel dirty buying an Apple product from Best Buy.
At full price.
I just can't do it.
So
even discounted.
The Lightning to 3.5 millimeter is actually only $9 now from the Apple Store. That's actually very, very surprising.
That's not bad.
Oh man,
Yeah, it's like the cheapest product in their store, I bet.
How about the Shure SM7B? So I know that there was a little bit of there's a controversy in general ever since the Harris Heller video spiked a bunch of conversations because like somehow here in 2021 clickbait titles are taken out of context and then transcend into full-blown like conversations that people have. It was also interesting because of the mic that was used in the video to compare to the Shure SM7B, because like we were talking about before the podcast, the Q9U just wasn't all that great. And then you had a video that came out and kind of went over the Shure SM7B in detail, had some tests and stuff. What was your inspiration to record that video? What was like the spark for you to get that started?
Yeah, so I think you and I both know in content creation, especially when we get into the more kind of fringe technical parts of content creation, recommendations are everything. And even more so in audio, where there's hundreds of companies making thousands of pieces of equipment that seem very similar. And so at some point you have these, the content creation amalgamation of industry, like I'll say the industry, even though there's no one person, there's no such thing as the content creation industry, and there's not like a council of content creators or something that is kind of dictating that, but enough big content creators or content creators of the platform kind of decided that the Shure SM7B is the end game microphone for content creators. And as a big audio guy, like I'm all for simplifying someone else's search. Everybody should not need to know every major microphone at every major price range to be able to make an informed, or not even an informed decision, but an uninformed, but still good decision. Mm-hmm. Those can and should exist. You don't have to always make an informed decision when you want to buy stuff, in the sense that you know every spec about it. It's okay to make an uninformed one, but the SM7B to me is not the best uninformed or informed decision every time. And I just saw the blanket recommendations over and over and over again, like clockwork. And then working at TC Helicon for 2 years, I set up content creators over and over and over and over again, like clockwork, and ran into the same issues. And I just noticed every time it's someone with an SM7B, it's way more difficult to get a low noise floor. It's way more difficult to tame the bass. It's and not that those are bad things. Like those inherently, when you have a more sensitive microphone, you also have a more accurate microphone and a more analytical microphone. You can actually pick up more in the voice when you're picking up more of everything else.
Right.
When you talk about scrunching your audio down into, a audio video combo of 6,500 kilobits per second and putting it on Twitch, that fidelity value goes way down.
Right.
So for me, it was just more than anything. Number one, I had some content creators and YouTubers just like call me and say that I'm bullshitting that the SM7B has a higher noise floor than some of the other sub $400 microphones, and even like the $229 one, like the Rode Procaster. Mm-hmm. And that ticked me off a little bit. So I'm like, I want to make sure that I can demonstrate this in a way that at least makes sense. But like at the same time, like the SM7B, and the conclusion of my video is not don't get the SM7B. The conclusion is there are 3 or 4 microphones you should be familiar with in the high end range for content creators. They have a varied spectrum of, their natural frequency response curves, their the noise floor sensitivity, how close or far away is the best thing, the amount of gain you need to push on the preamp to get them into the right levels in OBS or whatever you're using. And it's important to know that the SM7B is a bit more demanding of a microphone. And that's kind of where the video ended up coming from, and ended up, I think, ticking off a couple of content creators who didn't who didn't like that. And some people too, it's always weird because if you have a microphone and you love it, and somebody posts a video saying, here's why, if you don't already have this microphone, maybe you shouldn't just automatically love it.
Sure.
So those were some interesting conversations, but ultimately that's, I think, kind of where that came about, because I got tired of explaining it all the time. Now I can just be like, just watch the video, leave me alone.
I feel like that is a big motivating force behind me recording a video for YouTube. I obviously, both of us in our nature have no problem helping people with, especially audio, but just like technology in general. Like, we're here to answer questions. It's in our nature. We love to do it. But when there is such a simple question that has a simple answer, and you're like, well, instead of answering this 700,000 more times over the next decade, I can create a video that will just alleviate that mini pressure. And I feel like being in tech support is just like a constant job of alleviating micro pressures everywhere, so that you have more time to focus on some of the bigger things. Harris Heller, his Twitch stream used to be an area where everybody would just come and ask questions, and a lot of the questions are the same ones over and over and over. And then you see him get to the point where he says, hey, like, run this command, watch this video, because there's no value in saying the same exact thing to the same group of people just nonstop over and over.
Yeah, and there's a lot of that. And there's still just a lot of, right now the SM7B, whether we like it or not, or agree with it or not, is the most popular XLR microphone for content creators.
Absolutely. Yep.
By far. At least among, like, I think it was Gaming Careers did a video where he went through the top 500 or so streamers on Twitch and looked at which audio gear they were using, and the SM7B was the most, behind the Blue Yeti, which I think we kind of know, but again, not an XLR microphone.
Right.
But even then, it also gets into the whole dynamic condenser debate, which you want to really, put a bomb off for a second, is, have an argument with somebody about noise floors versus condensers and dynamics, because condensers are generally meant to be used here.
Right.
But if you run them right here, they have very similar noise floors to dynamic microphones.
Yep.
Very similar. That's not how it's meant to be run, but yeah.
When I had my my AT2020, or my AT25 going through the same DBX286, I had such a easier time getting a accurate noise gate with my AT2035, real close, like super up in my mouth. And then I got the RE320. I'm like, why am I having such a difficult time dialing this in? Like, I should be having an easier time because of how much better it does with the off-axis rejection. And then just like through research found like, oh, you know what? Actually, with some condenser microphones, they're not all that different when they are tuned correctly. But then again, like when I go back and I look at all my old VODs near the end, all of my audio from the 2035, it was super boomy, high proximity effect.
Exactly.
No tapering off of audio. And I was like, yeah, see, it was easier to noise gate, but it didn't sound as good in the end.
And this is the point where I'm going to get into some generalizations a little bit. And I'm not here to talk about every single thing, but I'm going to speak generally in saying, like, condensers. And so first, it's important to understand that the worst thing with audio streaming right now is noise floor.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter what microphone you have. You can have the nicest microphone you can have with a noise floor that is obvious, and it's going to sound worse than a really crappy microphone where you don't have the every time that your gate opens up and closes because you have a box fan in the background. Like, that's just the nature of what it is. So a condenser up close is going to sound, as far as noise floor goes, very similar to a dynamic. But condensers aren't meant to sound the best at that distance.
Mm-hmm.
Generally speaking, again, I swear to God, if you post well, actually, this condenser microphone is, I'm going to elbow you straight in the jaw. I swear to God. There are exceptions, but generally speaking, especially among more affordable condenser microphone options, the USB options, they're meant to be used, about 8 to 12 inches away. And that's where you get the most clarity. And because of that, they have the exaggerated proximity effect to get the full spectrum of your voice. So obviously when you go up really close on one of those microphones, you're going to get a ton more bass frequency than you would for a dynamic microphone, which is meant to be used, at about this distance away. And it is, God, I hate Thomas and David, like all the TC Helicon MVPs and stuff that I've worked with over the years. They're in chat right now and they're just tilting me. So yeah, but anyways, I always say it's like a guitar amp. Like guitar amps are meant to run at like a certain volume. If you buy the biggest guitar amp possible and run it at, a 0.5 dial out of, 0 to 11, you're not getting the most out of the tone you can get in that guitar amp. Most guitar amps are going to sound the best when you're pushing it between like 50 and 75%. At the same time, you get a really small guitar amp and you put it up to 11, it's not going to sound great either. You want to find those sweet spots in the same way microphones work almost the exact same way. So
gotcha. Yeah, there's and one of the reasons that I kind of brought this up is because we've had some fantastic conversations in the past. And I've learned kind of so much from reading the replies of your tweets. So like when you ask a certain question on Twitter where its purpose is to begin a conversation, going through not only from a technical perspective of seeing the correct, accurate answers, but seeing how people think about audio and seeing like what perspectives are kind of conjured when it comes to the audio world. And of course, some thinking is so fucking outlandish. And like, I'm not going to lie, like I probably had some outlandish thinking like way back when as well. But
I probably do.
Hey, that's all right. We're all learning. We're all growing together. So yeah, the condenser versus dynamic microphone.
Oh, you want to know the new? Sorry, I want to go to this, but do you want to know the new thing that I learned that I'd been peddling for a long time that I was just wrong on?
Yes.
Sample rate. How do you think sample rate affects latency?
It does.
Yeah.
So I actually, funny you say that because I've had a couple TikTok scuffles recently because the TikTok comments section is worse than YouTube's. I don't know what it is about TikTok. I have to assume it's because of the length of the videos. Recently, I did a video where some kid said, hey, if you want more FPS on your gaming PC, stop using HDMI and use DisplayPort. And like you said before, I can't stand blanket statements when it comes to technology because using DisplayPort to get more FPS, while in most cases is true, is not true 100% of the time. So I made a response TikTok. All it said was that HDMI 2.0 and up supports higher frame rates or higher refresh rates, excuse me. And the replies to that video just getting shit on by these teenagers telling me about like DisplayPort does 16K, it does better at 1440, blah, 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 blah. So anyways, yeah, those blanket statements are like, it's almost become my mission to refute those and debate them because especially in tech, you just have so many people that have to say this is better than that. There can only be one king. There can only be one best and no other options compare. And especially when it comes to what display and what peripheral you're choosing, there's so many different situations that matter. Resolution, frame rate, distance, the type of content that you are playing, the type of content that you're editing. Like fuck the blanket statements. And so I'm glad that you've kind of had the same experience.
And then it gets really challenging because how do you do that? How do you be an assumption challenger without just being that angry guy on TikTok who just goes, you f***ing idiot? Like, you're wrong. You're wrong. And I think you do a great job of it, where it's like, I think your TikToks are really funny. All the voices, the little microphone thing and stuff. Like, I think all that's great. But there are creators on TikTok who are just, it's like they almost exist there just to tell people how wrong their TikToks are. And I hate that.
Yeah.
And because it's, and they're always like, well, I'm not attacking them personally, or I'm not doing this. I'm like, yeah, but you're just kind of coming off as an ass.
Yep.
Like, I don't know, find a better way to position it. You don't have to build yourself up by putting other people down. And
I had to make that promise to myself before, because I knew that one of the main motivators of me starting to create content on TikTok was to correct that misinformation. But I was like, you have to do it with kindness. You have to be nice. You have to re-educate, and you have to like kindly tell the person why they're wrong, because the spread of misinformation, especially when it comes to like this field, is really, really bad on TikTok, because you'll get one video that gets an insane amount of views, and unless that creator deletes their original video, the newest correction video that they put out is not going to get any hits. And it's like, I just experienced this yesterday, or 2 days ago. Streamlabs announced that you can use Streamlabs OBS to go live on TikTok. And of course, that spreads like wildfire across all the platforms. What nobody sees is the amendment they make to the blog post that says, oh, by the way, this is only currently available for selected users on TikTok. It's like, okay, well, the post that went viral was that this new feature is available. Nobody fucking sees the amendment to the blog post. And that's unfortunately just kind of like the world that we live in when it comes to social media.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah. Anyways.
Like,
no,
I
all
can go
good.
down to thing on that.
I love the tangents. Going back to the dynamic condenser conversation, I brought up this example so many times, but I remember learning about dynamic microphones at first, and then learning why they were better for streamers and the differences between the two. And then I came across Elspeth, who is a pretty popular content creator on the platform. And I went into her stream, and she had a AT2035 sitting at like keyboard height level, probably 1 to 2 feet away from her mouth. And it was the cleanest, most crisp audio that I had ever heard from a streamer. And so me and my like newbie brain were going, what the fuck is going on here? Not only she's not using a dynamic microphone, it's like 2 feet away from her face, and it sounds amazing. And again, the voice that she has is a massive, massive part of that. But it proved to me that condenser microphones weren't all that bad, and in the correct applications were actually superior to a dynamic microphone. Because it would be, if she had an RE320 or a Shure SM7B, it would be a totally different sound. And that was like a huge eye opener for me.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, is understanding where you're creating content is one of the biggest things. I think, like, the first thing when I'm like, what microphone should I get? I go, what's your room like? Is it like this? Like, this is a relatively okay treated room. I still have 16-foot high ceilings. I can't really use a condenser microphone in here. It's going to pick up too much of the reverb, no matter how much of this. I basically would have to drape, but if to put in a drop ceiling or like drape on one of my old apartments, actually draped heavy fabric.
Oh, wow.
Across. And it looked pretty cool. It was really fun. You put some like lights up in the top there, and it was like really, really vibey. But I'm too lazy now
to do all that again.
Like for me, it's just not something that makes sense. And for most content creators, condensers don't make sense. And it's all about, choosing a microphone is a choose your own adventure in a lot of ways, where it's like, or like, a choice spider graph or whatever. But people, you should start at like, let's look at a dynamic microphone. Or like, and then, instead of being like, do you want dynamic or condenser? Like, you don't have, that isn't the first choice that you make. You quantify what kind of content you're making, what your room treatment is like, what your noise floor is like, what your voice is like, the type of, I think I already said this, the type of content you're making. All of that kind of happens up, and then you're like, oh, okay, well, now you have a choice between a condenser and dynamic, and then you can kind of go through the trees of the different type of condenser or dynamic microphones that you want to choose. And I still think the biggest thing that I don't think content creators have caught on to yet is most microphones are not meant to be used dry.
Why can you expand on that a little bit?
They're just, I mean, everybody's voice is different. Like it's, and the reason why I haven't made a video about it yet is because I haven't found a good enough analogy. Basically, it's like you need to have a really strong analogy in there.
Bring it to the people.
But the the SM7B is a great example of a microphone that's not necessarily meant to be used dry. How do you make this microphone sound as good for somebody who has a bass voice register versus someone who has a soprano voice register?
Right.
What the SM7B does is it tries to give you the most accurate real life recreation response curve. So it's famously flat to be able to do so. And then you go in and EQ it to take out the parts that are good or bad because it's a nice flat microphone. The RE20 is they take an opposite thing. And this is a microphone that's meant to help you a lot more, but it's meant more for spoken word, lower voices. Mm-hmm. You don't hear a lot of women using RE20s.
Right.
And it's not like that you can't sound great with an RE20, but like in the professional industry, you would do a little bit more work than getting somebody an SM7B or going with some sort of different style dynamic podcasting microphone. So it's, the short of it is everybody's voice is different, and there's no single microphone that's going to perfectly encapsulate your voice. You have to be like an Adam Levine's type dude where you go in, spend 3 weeks with Rode where they analyze every part of your voice, and then they, create a microphone with a response curve that's perfect for your voice. And then maybe you have one that's meant to be that way. But most microphones are, and again, like, I don't know of a single professional application where people are just like, let's just run the SM7B dry.
Right.
No EQ, no compressor. Like some would be like, well, we'll do light compressing. You know what? We're just doing a little bit of a bass presence boost or something, like it doesn't have to be like if your curve is all wonky and stuff like that, then yeah, you might be using the wrong microphone. But microphones are meant to be, taking out and accentuating the worst and best parts of your voice. And we still are, as a content creation market, we are saying, I want to get the SM7B because it is the best sounding microphone. And you're like, that is a sentence that doesn't even translate to me anymore.
For a microphone being notoriously flat, why is it that the idea that is attached to the SM7B at the hip is the radio voice, the deep, the boomy, the full voice?
Because most microphones cut bass.
Okay.
The SM7B really doesn't.
Okay. So naturally out of the box, that is the reasoning for that. Okay. That's how I've always felt about the RE322. Like I felt like it was such a compliment to the low end part of the voice. Like when I brought this thing out of the box, I plugged it into my DBX 280 I'm like, I haven't even gotten to the well, there's a 2-band EQ. There's the low frequency and the high frequency. And I hadn't even gotten to any of that yet. I'm like, wow, this actually sounds really good. I could tweak a couple things here and there. But I was really impressed. So that's kind of a question that I've had in the back of my mind for a while. It's like, so why is it that if the Shure SM7B is flat, and because you can tell when you go into a streamer's channel and the SM7B just doesn't sound good. Like it's super flat, it's very airy, and I mean, a lot of people they'll have like the mic coming from behind them and like pointing forward. Like, okay, I know why that doesn't sound good.
Why doesn't this sound good?
It's like a fucking ice cream sandwich. This is how
my friend talks into her Audio Technica. Why doesn't this sound good?
Same thing with like the Blue Yeti of just talking into the top of it like a fucking popsicle. Oh,
Andy
man.
Samberg did that for an interview on I think it was Seth Meyers, and it just like Andy Samberg's a top 5er for me, and he dropped a couple just for using. He uses the Yeti, and he's like, it's far down here, and it's just straight up.
Yeah. Yep.
I was just like, and you're on the Lonely Island. You like record into microphones all the time.
It is so. You gotta wonder if they left that set and went, shit, I did not set that up right, or I paid somebody who did not set that up right, and now it's on the internet forever.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah. Anyways, like that's the. There's a lot of like much smaller technical reasons to why, bass response and frequencies, like when you take off the top of this thing here, which is great for the audio listeners. I'm sure you love this.
Yes, here, I'll compliment it. ASMR for you.
But you can kind of see where the capsule is.
Right.
On this, right? And then when you look at your microphone right there, the top of your capsule, so the top of my capsule is about right here.
Okay.
The top of your capsule is almost right up to here.
Is it? Okay, so I thought it was a little bit farther down, but I can't see because there's a pop filter on the inside of my mic.
It's almost right up there. At least I guess I should say the RE20 is. I haven't broke down or look at a schematic for an RE320, but I assume it's exactly the same.
I need a YouTube channel to cut this mic in half for me so I can see the inside.
I'm sure there's a schematic, but yeah, and like that kind of goes against a lot of what we know, but it also is like, okay, that's that much farther away. How much more would you have to turn up your gain if you talk this far into your microphone to like make the distances the same?
Just from you moving it, like there's like a 2 to 3 decibel difference, and then just like that, that proximity effect, it tapers off super, super hard. So that is interesting.
And part of that goes down to just how the capsule is designed, how it's powered, and it starts to get a little bit technical and a little bit like more art, less science-y.
Right.
When it comes to the thing where it's like, we don't know why this sounded so good this way in the combination, but we got it right. and we're gonna keep getting it right for as long as we can.
Would you say you have your mic at like a 45-degree angle? It's kind of hard to tell with the camera.
Yeah, it's probably a little bit closer to like a 37 to 38 degree angle, if I had to be precise.
Okay.
But
I like it.
Yeah, so it's usually like when I'm streaming, I'm kind of like right here like this.
Okay.
And yeah, it's pretty close to 45, and that way I don't get the plosives and the puh as much as puh. So
even with the pop filter on the inside of the RE320 and this guy, I still find my plosives a little too heavy. And I'm like, man, and I'm sure there's a little bit that I could do on the EQ side of that to taper it off a tiny bit. I found a guy on YouTube, like he creates YouTube content around EQ and microphones and recording. And so I sent him an email. I'm like, hey, how much would you charge for me to like do like a 1 to 2 hour session of teaching me some of the basics? And he gave me a price, and I'm probably going to do that pretty soon. Like just to get like a general understanding of EQ and kind of what makes what tick. And your Go XLR EQ video was a fantastic primer into that. Like just a quick base overview of what each frequency, like what kind of sounds that controlled. I was like, that's something I had never known before. I had always just tuned my compressor until I thought that it was pleasurable to listen to. So to get a bit of a breakdown on those frequencies was super helpful for me.
Yeah, that's great. Well, that's something that I think is kind of it's a magic wizarding book where it's like, oh yeah, just turn up the bass on your EQ, and you're like, I have no idea what the that means. Like, why is the low part the bass part? And I don't get that until you have someone like explain this is where this part lives. Mm-hmm. You have to play with it. You have to have an EQ to be able to play with. But yeah, I get lots of like requests on, unfortunately I can't really help out a lot, but I get a lot of requests like, will you help me EQ, or will you go through and teach me this? And I have a thing in my Discord that people can go to and they can post there. And like when I have some free times, I throw on my headphones and I listen to them and I'll provide EQ tips. But once you kind of figure out what everything does, then the next biggest barrier is just trying to be a unbiased third party and what your voice sounds like, because everybody hates the sound of your voice.
Right.
Or no, everybody hates the sound of their voice, their own voice. Not everyone hates the sound of your voice. But everyone hates the sound of their own voice. And it's hard to look at that in an unbiased way. And so then subconsciously we flip a switch and say, I hate the sound of my voice, but I want to sound like this creator.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're like, so for me, I'll use an example of Tim the Tatman. Tim and I have no no similarities in our voice at all, outside of that we're both men. That's it. So for me to approach an EQ, and I EQ'd Tim's microphone for him.
Oh, no shit.
Go XLR. Yeah. And so when I EQ'd his voice, I EQ'd it very differently than I did for myself. Because we have different voices, and it took me years of playing with my EQ to kind of like detach, this is me and I hate the sound of me versus this is just a voice and I'm trying to make it sound the best that I can. Even then, Tyler, I think, was in chat earlier, like, does John sound a little bit bassy? I'm like, F you, my voice is bassy. That's exactly how I want it. That's exactly how my voice sounds, bitch.
So with Tim's microphone being 16 feet away from his mouth, how the hell did you go about EQing that?
So, and he's like moved since then. Like, he went from New York to Florida, and
That's right.
Been like, he's in a wood floor room and he's in walls, and it's just kind of like, just go for it, dude.
Yeah.
It's just kind of, I don't think he changed it. I don't think he changed it from going from one to another, but it was a lot of it is just first microphone education. So I think one of the most challenging ones that I set up was Pokimane. And Pokimane, she had some sort of really fancy condenser microphone with switches on it, and was like a $1,200 microphone going into like a $1,400 preamp.
Before her RE20?
Before her RE20.
I don't think I ever saw that.
And so somebody recommended to her the Go XLR. And then someone's like, well, if you're going to get it, have this guy set it up for you. So she got it. She's like, I can't get my this nice condenser microphone to sound good in this way. And like, first, her audio before wasn't very great, but it also was like, the Go XLR preamp is, a $200 to $250 preamp. It's not going to hold a candle to a $1,400 preamp. I'm sorry.
Right.
And so we had conversations about that and talked more about, how do you want to sound to your stream? And she goes, well, I want to sound more broadcasty. I get a lot of echoes. And we're like, oh, you should get a dynamic microphone. And she ended up going like, I really like your microphone. Can I try it? And I was like, yes, just be prepared to return it if it doesn't feel right to you. And she got the ugly beige one.
Yeah, I did notice.
She had the
that.
beige one for a while. She goes, I can't get that microphone. She goes, I can't. And I'm like, I get it. It's an ugly microphone. And then they ended up coming up with a black one, and she uses the black one now.
Right. I need people to like accept that how a microphone looks matters. It absolutely fucking matters, and it's why nobody buys the fucking Samsung QU2, is because it looks like a microphone that Adam Lazzara from Taking Back Sunday was swinging around the goddamn stage. People want something sexy, and I don't fault people for that. Like, if you enjoy the thing, the way that something looks, that's important to people, and I'm all about it personally.
I'm an aesthetic little bitch.
Yeah. I love aesthetic. It's like
We're
dress
Apple guys.
Aesthetic. Exactly.
I'm like, I know I can go build a big, stupid, ugly, bitch ass tower. I'm not going to.
I want the platinum.
I know the thermals aren't quite the same.
It's fair.
But I've never met somebody who is like, wow, you're really successful. What computer are you using? Oh, that piece of shit. Like, no.
I'll take my autograph picture somewhere else.
Yeah. And it's weird because some people really like the retro look of the RE20. And like, I think I get by on it, and it's like, okay. And a big part of my brand unintentionally has become audio.
Mm-hmm.
And so I get a pass a little bit because I'm an audio guy. So I can have an ugly microphone and it looks cool on stream because I have some level of authority now as an audio guy.
Right.
And, you know, like it's kind of like Bandrew from Podcasters is the same way. He uses ugly microphones all the time, but damn, he looks cool using them because, well, he can.
Yep, because he's one of the authorities. That's definitely why. Hey, can you entertain chat for 90 seconds while I use the restroom real quick?
Yes,
I shouldn't have drank as many liquids. By the way, you got whiskey in that Coke? You were just coking?
Just a little bit of whiskey, not much.
Yeah. Okay, sweet.
Rum, but yeah.
Okay, well, hey, bring in the subscribers, please. I'm a little short this month.
All right. Listen here, chat. Apparently, this guy brought me onto his show to shill for subs, and I'm okay with it. I think I've decided in this moment that you should probably sub here if you want me to ever come back at all. And if you don't want me to come back at all, put a sub in here, but put an emoji in the note for the sub. And then we'll know and we'll be able to tally, and it'll be really good. And that's, I think, what we're supposed to do. I don't think that I am on board with Nick's clown in the background, by the way. I'm not on board with that. I don't know what the hell that is about. I don't know why people keep coming here with a clown with boobs in the background. Hellhound, thank you for the gifted sub. Appreciate it. I indeed am not subbed. So, thanks. There it is. David's in. We get it. We're catching up now. Let's get it rolling. You like my selling method? Appreciate it. It's I did all right. I had one sales job and I did pretty good. So, you know, we'll see what he says. How did I do?
Oh shit! You actually did it. Okay, those are getting deposited right in your bank account. Oh my god! Scam train, full-fledged clay. Oh my god, bro! I am impressed. That is a Crocs and Hot Pockets first, right there. I'm impressed.
What can I say?
Mom, look at what your son is doing right now. The glow up. The Crocs and Hot Pockets glow up, man.
Oh, nice. My mom got a sub to your channel.
So did my pot. Oh my God. Let's glow. Go. Let's glow. That was freaking awesome. That is not what I expected whatsoever. Let's go.
Chat, you're the best.
You're the best, chat.
Appreciate it.
Do you want to touch on USB microphones like a tiny bit?
That's something I learned today.
So one of the main reasons that I want to touch on this, and everybody that just dropped subs, thank you, is because I love illuminating when I have a partially incorrect mindset. So you had a tweet back in July of 2020, and you just asked another conversation driving question of, you know, what is it about microphones, that USB microphones that make it so not like universally accepted? So your question was, what is your perception of an XLR microphone plus interface? Excuse me. What is your perception of what an XLR microphone and interface does that a USB microphone does not? Who do you think benefits from those differences? And one thing that my error when I replied to this tweet originally was,
you were mean. I'm just kidding.
You're a bitch. Was my my anecdotal response of what XLR and USB meant to me as a creator in my own space. So my points were fragile USB ports on the mics, if not USB-C, more control than a single gain knob, if there's a gain knob, LED meters for gain staging, clip detection, PC games opening on Windows doesn't allow the OS to force change recording levels, which is basically just games taking control of the microphone level in the Windows sound and like actually changing the sensitivity of the microphone, which happens on USB audio interfaces too. It's not just USB microphones. That's kind of a moot point. not based on software and then chain hardware. And through discussing that with you, having you rebuttal the points, and then we had Ernst that was jumping in there as well. Shout out Ernst. It was a great conversation because I realized that a lot of the things that I found beneficial weren't beneficial to like the grand scheme of things. Like there were things that I loved about my analog setup that weren't necessarily good for everybody else. And it didn't really occur to me that that mindset was incorrect until I started understanding why people got into Voicemeeter. People that get into Voicemeeter tend to want to overcomplicate their setup when they don't need to. And to me, it's about convincing that person that they don't need to overcomplicate it. That people streamed on Twitch without having individual control of Discord and their game and their mic audio and their desktop sounds, and like taking individual apps and sending them to individual faders. Like, people streamed without having that functionality. So like, you think you need that functionality when really it's kind of a privilege to be able to do that. It's not a necessity for the person streaming in their bedroom. And so that was kind of like a little bit eye-opening for me. And then obviously seeing other people's responses to that tweet as well. Are you still kind of in the same boat perspective-wise with that original tweet?
Yeah, absolutely. And so like, I do need to put out a disclaimer in a second. So I'm a contractor and I do a lot of consulting for companies on a lot of different audio products. And my opinions here, I'm not trying to present them in a disingenuous way to get you to buy products that I've worked on or maybe working on or may have worked on in the past. I'm not that type of person, but I need to let people know that this is, I've worked on these products in this past. So I have a vested interest in this opinion, but it's also because I have this opinion that I developed the vested interest in the first place.
Round and round.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, first of all, just on a pure technology level, there is technically nothing different than what an SM7B into an XLR cable, into a Scarlett, into a Cloud Lifter, into a whatever, into, a DAC converter, or I guess an ACD converter, into USB, into your computer. There's technically no difference outside of potentially the size of some of the components that are chosen to be used than just putting them all into the microphone itself. In fact, you can make the argument by not having to go from analog to digital and run analog wires and have, larger, more complex PCBs and individual ports onto the PCBs. You could, say that a USB microphone is the most efficient way of getting your voice to a computer and the most lossless way to get your voice to your computer, depending on, the specifications on what is inside of the microphone.
Mm-hmm.
The issue becomes that we as content creators had the Simpsons monorail guy come in and sell USB microphones for a long time, shaking his hands, going monorail, USB mic, and they're coming in and they're super happy. And then, everything it's an under-spec'd product, under-delivered product. And we haven't had a lot of great USB microphones so that we could have the trust to begin with. We haven't had great DACs. We haven't had great headphone amps built into a USB microphone before. We haven't had an effective like compressor, I think that, the MV7 does some of that stuff. And I don't know if it does it on some sort of DSP technology or if the app is what drives it and is, doing it kind of software side. Mm-hmm. I don't know the answer to that, but presuming that it is on the microphone itself, we have very little exposure to companies who are actually developing microphones to be used via USB in the same way that someone would get an XLR microphone set up to be used. And that is because we don't have a lot of microphone manufacturing companies looking at content creators and only content creators.
Right.
Even then, I think Elgato like really like they missed big. And I put this in my review a long time ago. They sent me a wave to review when I was in between TC Helicon and Beacon. They gave me a microphone to review, and the number one thing I said is they got the mixing part right, but microphones aren't meant to be used dry for most people. In these types of environments, you need to be able to make your voice sound, make your voice your brand, and you can't do that with an Elgato mic. You can't really do that. You can do that now with Blue microphones, but now it requires software.
Yep.
So I just don't think it's kind of one of those things where it's I would be disingenuous to say that the USB microphones that we have right now execute on the promise of being really great technologically.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that they can't necessarily execute technologically in an awesome way. And I think that we've seen like the Shure MV7 is a great example where it's one of the most popular microphones, and most content creator like YouTubers and reviewers recommended over the SM7B for most people.
Mm-hmm.
Not because necessarily it's flat out just like a better acoustically sounding microphone, but because of all the advantages that you get with it, the ability to step between USB to XLR to whatever else. So I think that I'm a big believer in that USB microphones can and should be and probably will be the content creator microphone of choice going into the future. There's always going to be old analog heads. Like remember when DAWs first came out, like the first Pro Tools? And think of how much that had to really piss off production people, and think of how many people like refused to go from their old tapes and the things and all that kind of stuff. And like, you do it live. And, and to be fair, the early DAWs sucked ass.
Right.
They weren't good. They were a risk to run in a lot of ways. Now, when you go now, have you ever been to a recording studio that doesn't use a DAW? Right. No, there's probably a few dozen in the whole world that will record that way, and they record for a specific purpose, and it's not to get the best quality sound, it's to get a certain type of sound. And there's all sorts of fail safes and things that have been inserted because the technology is so cheap now, and all that stuff, where it's like, some of the like really iconic albums were, cut with like Owl City's Ocean Eyes was cut in GarageBand.
Yes. And that's kind of what blows my mind too, is Jonathan Morrison, the YouTuber, does a lot. I'm actually really surprised you don't, because his channel is very Apple focused. Always an Apple reviewer, heavy into music, huge proponent of like audio shit. I'm really surprised that you don't know him.
I'm a boomer when it comes to YouTube.
Are you really?
I am. I don't like, people are like, oh, when I relax at night, I watch YouTube videos. I go, is there a specific YouTube video that came out that day? Like, no, I subscribed, and this guy comes out with 5 videos a week, and I just catch up on those. And I was like,
go through them.
I go, oh, I watch Netflix and HBO like a responsible adult.
Wait a minute, you can't watch YouTube as an adult? Is that what you're saying on the
No, it's totally podcast? It's literally like the most hypocritical thing ever in the sense that I'm like, for some reason, that type of entertainment for me, like, just never, my brother is like a binge YouTuber. I'm just not a binge YouTuber. So like, I'm pretty ignorant when it comes down to like, and I try to do my research on who's talking about the things that I care about.
Right.
But, so I'm kind of YouTube ignorant in a lot of ways. Like, I don't have a very wide net.
That's really funny, because I'm also hypocritical in where I don't watch TV or movies, but I will watch an entirety of one movie over the course of the year by seeing YouTube clips of it. Like there was for example, like Sopranos. I have seen every single character in Sopranos get whacked through watching clips of the show on YouTube, but I've never sat down and watched an episode of The Sopranos. And I'll see clips of movies and TV shows on TikTok or on YouTube. And then my girlfriend, who is a massive TV show and movie buff, I'll say, hey, I found this cool video on TikTok and it's for a movie. Like, hey, check it out. And then she'll watch the entire thing and then just relay back whether it was good or not.
Yeah, I'm just like, I can't tell you why it never clicked for me, why I don't like, because there's a lot of stuff. Every time I spend like a couple hours on YouTube, I'm like, oh, this was nice. I should do it again. You know, in the same way, like going for a walk is like, that was really nice. I don't know why I do that more often.
4 months
in September
later.
Walk.
That's a perfect analogy for that. Wow, I feel great. How rewarding.
Man, these endorphins are bad. Ugh.
Anyways, I'm going to go back to staying inside.
I've got more important things to do inside, though. Like watch Shadow and Bone on Netflix.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wait, no, I just got mixed up with that movie, Michael Jai White, Blood and Bone. It's like a street fighting game.
I've been calling to Katie, I've been calling it the Stone and Bone. The Stone and Bone. Let's watch the Stone and Bone. Because it's not funny. I don't care.
I liked it. It's okay. I think you're funny, John.
Appreciate it. That's why I'm here. Need someone to laugh.
Super interesting conversations around USB microphones. And the one gripe that I have, and again, what you said is so true about asking the right questions before sending somebody on their way with a microphone choice, because I still recommend USB microphones all the time. The reservation with the Elgato Wave is great. It's a mixer, and it gives you a whole ton of GoXLR-like features in software. But when it comes to, it's so weird that there's a product that was sold as a microphone that came with some additional features, where the additional features are more so the focus of the product, not the product itself. Like, the point of buying a microphone is to get your voice from point A to point B. And as far as quality, your job is to EQ that bitch and to get it to sound better than it was when it came out of the box. But there is no focus on that with the Wave at all. It's just dry, but here's some software to help mix things as well.
And to Elgato's offense, there is some stuff. ClipGuard. Awesome
Correct.
thing. Which,
Correct.
like, ClipGuard is really cool for those who want to know how, like, the sausage is made. It's literally always running 2 different preamps at 2 different levels. And when it detects the higher level preamp clipping, it goes to the lower preamp. And then they just use makeup gain to bring it kind of back down. And it's really fascinating stuff. But it's also, like, super standard in the audio industry, where, like, everyone in the audio industry is like, wait, you guys don't have ClipGuard? Right. Like, that is a really handy thing. They also did a really sharp, bass cutoff, which, for clarity and for removing, like, room noise, the best thing you can do is just cut out all frequencies below 80 hertz. like, of course. But you lose some of that, that rich bassy voice that you love. But for most content creators, it's about being heard, period. Right. Not necessarily about, to the level of quality that you're being heard. It's like, can people hear you and understand you? And I think that that's not and I don't want to, like, misrepresent Elgato in any way, but, like, that's my interpretation of it. And I think that we should be doing more with content creators and microphones. And I'm like a huge microphone chain advocate. I'm just like, I believe in it so much. And the fact that we just, we're kind of teetering at this point where we don't really have a lot to be able to do. And the industry hasn't found an effective way to really educate or automate microphone chains. And the consumers aren't really exposed to them, just means that there's just kind of just this gap. And so I think that that's probably something that should be solved. And I agree. I wish I knew the best way to solve it, because my GoXLR EQ video has like 22,000 views on YouTube. Think of that. A YouTube, and it's almost like 30 minutes. It's ridiculous.
Right. It goes to show the need for that.
And it's like my top rated video too. It's like 99.7% or something. Like there's a real disconnect. And, you know, for most people, I'm at a point now where I can listen to somebody's voice and I can spit out like an 80% accurate EQ on a 10-band EQ in my head.
No shit. Okay.
I can do that. Why can't like a computer do that?
That's a very good point. And to your point about filling holes, sorry, Mom, that is kind of like one of the main things that we're missing in a so we need a Go XLR Mini, maybe without the faders and the individual. We just need a way where you can have system-wide EQ. Like, I wish that somebody would take the EQ routing part of the Go XLR and put it into an audio interface that just gave people system-wide noise gate, EQ, and compression. If you could split that out into two PCs for a dual PC setup, that would be awesome. But that's, like, again, one of the main things that most people miss. And I know that what you said about the accessibility and can you be heard, like, that is the number one thing that matters most as far as streamers go. And right behind that, in my opinion, is noise gate and compression. And those are two of the most forgotten things when it comes to this stuff, because when you plug in a USB microphone, you have a signal that goes from your microphone into the software, and then that's it. And if you want to, if you want to get nerdy and try and wrap your head around Voice Meter or some like third-party Java-based DAW that runs on Windows, and you're trying to like insert VSTs into a chain virtually, you're gonna have a really hard time.
Yeah, and like, and so number one, I'm personally on Team Expander versus Team Gates. I think expanders are better than gates. Almost everybody.
Do you want to expand on that?
No, I don't, because it's much harder to explain than a gate. Which
Come
is
on.
like, but yes. So like, here's what an expander does. So think of a compressor. So what a compressor does is when your voice goes above a threshold, it compresses that voice down by a certain ratio. And it's represented in like a 2-to-1 ratio, 4-to-1 ratio, or whatever. So if your voice peaks at -16, your threshold's at -20, and you've got a 4-to-1 ratio, that means that your voice now peaks at -19, I think, something like that.
And the ratio just being the strength of the compression.
The strength of that. So the higher the ratio, the more that is going to get brought down in volume. An expander is like an inverse compressor. So think of a gate. When a gate, you have a threshold, and whenever your voice goes above it, the gate opens up all the way, lets all your voice through, and then when your voice goes below the gate, it shuts. And you have an attack and release to determine how quickly those gates open and shut. What a expander does is, rather than having a hard open close point, when your volume dips below the threshold, it compresses it. And it compresses your noise floor based on the ratio that you choose. Okay. The higher the ratio, it's weird. So I think I always get this backwards, but like the higher the ratio, the more like a gate it is. So technically an expander with, I think, a 1-to-1 ratio is like a gate.
Interesting.
An expander with like a 16-to-1 ratio is a really gentle, like, opening and closing. So you never get, you know how gate, you kind of get like
not clipping, but the
it cuts off. So like if I'll turn my threshold. So I'm going to turn up my threshold right now, and you can like barely get all the things, and it's really great for all the users at home or the listeners at home. You're welcome. With a gate, or with an expander, you don't actually run into that issue because you're ramping into the threshold and ramping out. And so it's a far more natural take on what gates do. And gates, like, honestly, in a decent enough room, like if I used a gate and used a compressor right now, and I said side by side, tell me which one's different, you probably wouldn't be able to tell what the difference is. But if I handed it to, somebody who has, maybe a little bit louder noise floor, it would immediately be obvious that the gate immediately opens and you hear.
Right. Like with a fan or an air conditioner in the background.
Yeah, you get that.
Does the GoXLR have an expander?
It doesn't, but it has attenuation, which is kind of like a linear expander in a lot of ways. And people didn't like it when I told them that, by the way. They got really mad at me when I'm like, it's kind of there. We're limited in processing power. So we have to, we developed this to get you really close.
Hey, John, this product does 90% of things that nobody else does. What do you mean you can't give me?
I'm like, it technically is. We just use a percentage scale rather than a ratio scale. There's no difference between a 75% attenuation and a 4-to-1 ratio. I'm sorry. It's technically the same, but it's calculated different. I don't know how to explain this to you differently.
I'm making a YouTube video.
That's not how it works. Mine sounds different. And I'm like, no, Greg. So anyways, like you'll find that an expander and OBS has one built in, so you can play around with it a little bit.
I'm going to have to now.
But, play around with an expander a little bit. It's really nice, but again, it's a level, it's an additional layer of complexity now that if we decide that expanders are the way to go for content creators, we have to either automate or educate. And the education part we can do to a point. In the automation point, you have to get really good at it. And there's not a lot of companies that have an engineer who can just like go, I can detect when, what someone's noise floor is. And then all I need to do is choose an expander amount and call it good. There's not a lot of companies that can do it. There are companies that can do it. Bro, I have to pee really bad. You left earlier for pee. Can I pee?
Yes, you can.
Okay. I just want you to know though, you did. So I get to as well.
However, if you are going to go pee, you have to pause halfway through, hold for 10 seconds, and then resume. That's the only stipulation.
Are you going to get people to sub to my channel while I'm gone? I'm just kidding.
I don't know if I can do that.
Just kidding. Don't do that. Just get more people to sub to your channel.
Chat! Click on it. His name's probably in chat like a super, super long time ago. Click on it. Go sub. All right? What did he do to make you all sub? That's what I might never know if I don't go back and listen to this conversation again. But man, he must have given you some goods. Tyler, you had a message up above. So like a black box with no control surface. Yes. So what I want to see for the everyday content creator is a USB audio interface with a Midas preamp that has like almost no controls on it whatsoever. Have a DSP that is controlled by software like the GoXLR. And if you wanted to add 5 to 10 band EQ or 3 to 5 band compression, you could, but just being able to give somebody the power of plugging in a mic into a very, very good preamp, having software that was controlled like in the same simplicity that GoXLR is, right? And just some of the basics. Clip guard would be awesome. Having compressor, awesome. EQ, even if it's similar to the GoXLR with like a 5 to 7 band EQ. Wait, GoXLR is 10 band, isn't it?
Loaded question. That's a more complicated question than you want to know.
All right.
Well, it is though. So so the GoXLR is a 10 band EQ, but the lowest and highest are high pass and low pass, so they're not bell EQs.
Okay.
So you technically have 8. GoXLR Mini is a 6 band EQ, same thing though, so it's technically a 4.
Gotcha. Okay. Nobody understood that, but I did. That's what matters. So yeah, I was just explaining what I would like to see in a super basic interface. And basically I was saying, give me a USB audio interface with Midas preamps and no control on it whatsoever. Maybe like a mute button, or if there's 2 channels, a channel switch button, something. And just have super, super bass. Give me a gate or an expander, a compressor, a EQ, and then that is it. So when a streamer buys a microphone and this mystery USB audio interface at once, whether they have a single PC setup or a dual PC setup, they know going in that their gate or expander, their compressor, and their EQ applies to OBS, Audacity, Zoom. If they're recording software, because that's the number one confusion right now, is trying to maintain your EQ across all your different softwares. And it's why I think people start to lean towards Voicemeeter, is because they can make all their settings in Voicemeeter and then have the Voicemeeter be the in out and then output to all of their softwares, to where, like, if you don't have a Go XLR, that it just doesn't exist for you. You have way harder of a time to try and make that work, which is why I'm such a big fan of the audio setup, is because I can figure all this shit before it even hits a USB audio interface, and then I split it, and I don't have to worry about it.
Well, yeah, and so, like, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Your choices are something like a Go XLR, something analog like the rack that you have set up, or you're reduced to software. And there are some people, like Rob Dies a lot on Twitter, developed an OBS plugin that's a great all-in-one kind of VST. You just download it.
Shout out.
Speechy, there it is. And it's great. And he's done a lot of, I think, really solid work on, kind of what that should look like. The issue is how do you make that global for everything, not just OBS?
Right.
And that's where you, like, it's tough because, like, people are saying, like, Voicemeeter is great, but it needs VST support. Sadly, there's latency implications whenever you're even talking about VST support. And so how are you willing to weigh those things? And then you have to also go, like, okay, well, at what sample rates can I, do that, and bit depths can I do that in? And it just, I think that there's a reason why a lot of companies avoid, like, Go XLR has been out since 2018, and nobody has been able to come out with a really compelling competitor.
Which makes me think about the DSP and what went into writing the software control with that.
And it's, and, like, honestly, it is. And so, like, number one, it's not easy. It's not something that an Elgato can, like, necessarily turn around and do. I know you and I know of a company who has, let some leaks out on their, stuff. And I don't want to talk about it because I don't want to spoil it out there, but there are companies who have been rumored to be trying for a long time. And I can pretty much already, tell where, the shortfalls and pitfalls are in those, because just audio expertise is really tough. And why would you, as a tier 1 audio engineer? So, Nick, you're somebody who is, let's just say you're top 5 firmware engineer in the audio industry in the world.
Thank you.
Let's say you have the choice to make audio products for the music industry, something, or, the professional audio industry, something that you love and it's your heart passion project. Or you have the option to take a ton of money from Apple, Samsung, Amazon, Google to do speech recognition, blah, 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 work on their stuff. Or you can work in this little niche called the content creation market, which, has some, they talk about billions of dollars, but they're single digit billions of dollars. Whereas that's a quarter for some of those companies that those other are. You're going to come in making $600,000 plus a year if you go work at Apple with your level of expertise, entry level, not to mention all the stock options. You can stay true to your calling and stay in the music industry and still make a really respectable living. Or you can go to a company that, is making products for streamers and gamers and just do it. Like, why would you do that third? So,
sir, would you like to work with Dave Grohl or Mizkif? You can only choose one. Sorry,
and if you piss Mizkif off, he's gonna end up on LSF talking about you and on Twitter.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's tough. So you don't have enough, like, real audio centric minds who are passionate about content creators. And it's kind of the same thing. It's not that the technology to, like, make an iPhone is, only Chinese people can do it. Like, there's not anything inherently like special about somebody of Chinese descent as far as being able to, put together an iPhone or develop the process for doing that. There just aren't enough people who have that discipline and have those decades and generations of expertise there to be able to put that together. And the same thing on the audio side. It's not that, Elgato couldn't buy TC Helicon or the TC Helicon engineers and, put out something similar. It's just there has to be a really compelling reason to do that versus go make a bunch of money somewhere else. And the Go XLR is like the first real honest attempt at, like, in my opinion, again, I'm totally obvious. I worked for TC Helicon, so like I'm totally biased in this, but it was the first real streaming audio product at the time that didn't just try to shaft people and smoke and mirrors. And every time I see studio quality next to a microphone, it means nothing, because you know what? Turtle Beach has that next to every single one of their microphones from $20 to $250.
Yeah.
Like, what does that even mean?
It doesn't mean much anymore. And it's to your point, it's crazy that we see streaming, not only Twitch, but streaming as a whole, as this massive conglomerate of the world, when really it is it's a proton compared to the entire universe of audio and video. Like, we are such a small part. And I wonder when we're going to see that crossover where developers and engineers and manufacturers see the streaming world as like a viable contender when it comes to market share, and start getting those people to create products. Like, obviously Go XLR was one of the first to create a streamer focus, and we're seeing little inklings of ideas that are coming out. But again, like you said, 2018 is when that came out, and still we're sitting here with not that much else out there.
Well, and also remember too that streamers have a glass ceiling of what they're willing to spend on a peripheral of about $200.
This is true. That's very true.
So, like, Go XLR and Go XLR Mini are two exceptions to as products that go beyond that $200 price point. Though you can get a Go XLR Mini now through Sweetwater, I think, for like $199.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they have a what's called a super partnership, I guess.
Oh.
So, like which is a banger deal, by the way. But
yes, for the Mini,
then you still have to get a microphone, right? And so for a dynamic microphone, that's not handheld. You're $100. You're still at a $300 thing plus your XLR cable, plus So it's still kind of a prohibitive amount of money to be able to do that. So it's a lot to ask for a company to be like, make me a Go XLR. Oh yeah, it pisses me off when people are like, oh, you have like an RGB price tag on that. And I'm like, I know you've been abused, consumer, when it comes to products who market themselves to you, put a bunch of RGB on it, and you get an RGB tax. Go XLR is not a product that was RGB taxed at all. I can go toe to toe with any one of you and tell you why you're wrong.
Yep.
It's like the most ignorant, most like dismissive mindset I've ever heard. And I'm all for being skeptical.
Sure.
But don't state that opinion like because you don't.
I try to be nice when it comes to telling people that they are incorrect. But there is, and this is somebody who used to feel that the Go XLR was overpriced at the $400 price tag. And I'm somebody who has since completely reversed that mindset. It's not even trying to convince, but trying to defend the features for the price tag for the Go XLR, even in 2021, can be difficult. And again, that price ceiling for streamers absolutely exists, even though they seem to be biased when it comes to audio products compared to everything else that they spend money on in their streaming career. I've recently had some great Twitter conversations about it and things on TikTok, But yeah, there's some creators lately that have been up in arms about it, and it's like, listen, you're wrong.
But it also,
sorry,
like,
but you're wrong.
And to that point, you know, some of that hatred comes from actually just me. Like me as a person who had defended it poorly. We started off on the rotten foot because I defended Go XLR poorly. And, you know, that's something that I have to own, and I have to, like, you know, I just have to read people misrepresent entire conversations and entire situations, because I went more on the two dudes talking on Twitter side of things and like a representative of a company. Like,
sure,
we hear you, we understand you. I've let our engineers know. Instead of be like, what about a $200 preamp doesn't make this worth $400?
Mm-hmm.
What, you know, and having those things, or like, oh, I didn't drop leaving my podcast that I was on to help you set up your things, so you got really mad on Twitter and I called you out for it. And then, like, you know, those things where it's just like, all right, I'm just gonna shut up. I just need to shut up now.
So now in 2021, is it natural for you to be more empathetic or to be more understanding with your responses, or is it still like a I hope you have a great day?
Like, initial reaction is very much like defensive, like, you don't know what the heck you're talking about. Why are you John like this? But I've learned a lot at how you can do, in so many cases, you can do both.
Sure.
In so many cases, you can find a common ground, and you can be empathetic, and you can try to, take this opportunity to go, you know what, you're right. Your situation sucks, and we want to make that better for you. But we also don't think it's realistic that you expect this.
Sure.
Or like, you may think that this is, less stable than Voicemeter because of your personal anecdotal experience. I get that, but you're like empirically incorrect. And that's something that people don't want to hear, is that your situation or your understanding of the situation or your situation is different than the norm, or your perception of something is different than what most people think. And when you're a company that sells thousands of something, unfortunately, you don't get to focus on making change for the 1% who says, I get a lower noise floor with my cloud lifter. And I have to go, the cloud lifter has a noise floor of 129.5 dBFU, whereas the Midas preamp has 130 on top of digital gain staging. It's just, what people end up doing is they just end up, they forget exactly how much gain the cloud lifter supplies.
Mm-hmm.
So then they only add about 20 decibels of gain on average instead of the full 26. And so they're 6 dBs quieter, and so is their noise floor. And they're like, it's quieter now. And I'm like, I'm sorry. Be technically quiet. But like, the Go XLR, the reason why so many people disliked it compared to their cloud lifter setup was because for years, OBS taught them to, peek into the yellow, not peek into the red, because red is bad. Yep. And so when we finally helped them set up their gain to go, you should actually be clipping up into the red, they're like, oh yeah, but this sounds worse. And I go, yeah, but now ads don't blow out your viewers' ears. You're welcome. That's how loud it's supposed to be. So yeah, it's just, there's a lot there. I've tried to learn a lot. I've tried to grow as a person. I've tried to reach out and make amends to anybody who's like, I've had one of those defensive conversations with, and some people are just like, you know what, you, and there's nothing more that I can do about that.
Right. Yep. Yeah. Cause honestly, on a non-content creator level, on a personal level, do you want those type of people in your life that can't look back at a conversation like that and go, okay, this was situational and anecdotal, and I can just move on and we can just be normal people coexisting? Instead, you've got people that are like, well, You told me this thing 3 years ago, and I haven't forgotten about it yet. So therefore, no, we can't talk again.
I mean, like, it's tough because I suck at holding grudges. Like, part of me is like, I hope our new company gets big and we have a baller ass, Twitch party thing. And we're going to invite you, but you're not going to get VIP, but you're going to be invited and you're going to feel like you're going to need VIP or something. And you just, just like, F you back, right? Like,
right.
There's a piece of that there. But
that's human. Like that is baked into our DNA. I'm so certain of that. And it's hard to be anything else.
But I've tried really hard, and I use my wife for this to help me a lot. I explain the situation, say this is how I want to respond, and she is very quick to let me know when I'm being childish, petty, or just like stern. And it's just like, you know what? Like sometimes you should stand up for, what's being said. And, then she helps me craft the language to be a little bit more empathetic and understanding. And, no, I don't want people to but I don't consider my core group of friends to be people who are longtime grudge holders.
Okay.
I like to think that my friends are very forgiving and understanding and see the best in people and are willing to, really try to see, those something as a mistake. And when people aren't like that, like they're just not necessarily someone that I'm like, I wish we were friends. Like, I just wish you would like me kind of thing. Like I don't have that natural feeling.
Sure.
But I want people to like me, and I don't want people to not get a better product because some dude on Twitter, used their, at the time, 140 characters to, try to re-educate and lay out a second side of a situation. And it's just it's tricky business. Social media these days is a little bit of a minefield, and I think for a lot of really great reasons, and I think for a lot of really awful reasons.
Both. Yep. God, those fucking 140 days.
Yeah, I was funnier then though. I noticed that 280 characters makes my tweets less funny.
I talk too goddamn much now. I felt once I got into TikTok and I realized that you can only have 150 characters for a TikTok comment. And every time I'm like, God damn it, I need more characters. I can't say what I need to say with this. Please. But at the same time, it's a little humbling to force yourself to speak in less words. But sometimes like, dude, I need to rip this person a new pooper hole, and please give me some extra characters to do so.
Yeah. I'm finally at a point where I think, and I was like, I was kind of like an insecure load marketing person going into like GoXLR had a lot of challenges in launching with a very limited marketing budget, a very limited, everything. And so it was really important that the perceptions were right and that we got the right information out there, and that I listened on every website so that when a perception was incorrect, we did our best to correct it. And, look right now and watch someone say GoXLR and SM7B and Cloudlifter in the same tweet, and you'll see 5 responses saying, hey, you might not need a Cloudlifter.
Yep.
You find, you find all that kind of kind of language, and, or like, GoXLR is overpriced because, my Scarlett does the exact same thing, or it's software driven. And you'll notice almost verbatim, we built a language of education around not just like saying like, this is how it works, but we use such a consistent language that other users on Twitter actually correct each other using the language we gave them.
Yep.
Which is part of why I have my job now, as we made really, I think, effective language when we weren't picking fights on Twitter, to kind of, again, just re-educate and provide new information. And that's also something that companies don't do a lot. You know, a lot of companies that I've tested their audio products for, I'll ask them questions about it and they just don't know. They go, I don't know. The engineers worked with this person overseas to source the parts. We slapped our label on it. We developed the software.
That doesn't help you.
I'm like, okay, great. Why is it this way? Why don't you do this? And yeah, so I don't know. It was
the past
really,
now.
Yeah, it was a really fun chapter, but damn, did I get beat up. And most of the time it was my fault.
Hey, that's all right. Hey, and when it's funny that you say that, because the reasonings that I brought to that fight way back in the day on Twitter were probably just as off base as your responses. So this is why you make amends with motherfuckers, is so that you can have fantastic podcasts later in life.
Yeah, we went pretty long. I'm sorry. I think we went longer than you normally go for these shows.
No, this is actually shorter.
Oh, is it? Oh,
I think our first podcast was like 2 hours and 40 minutes, and we're just about to close up with the Q&A. But no, I'm pretty sure. And now you're gonna make me look, Chad. I'm gonna make all of you wait. Let's see, Crocs and Hot Pockets, #1 podcast with Kicked Tripod. Nah, of course it didn't come up because YouTube search is absolute dog shit. Are you kidding me? How? That's gonna play. I'm so sorry. Videos. My cat is screaming. Cat! That's all right. But no, we're timing wise, we're good.
You do go about 2 hours. Oh yeah. I would go like 2, almost to 3. Oh,
yeah.
Sheesh.
I've been a little better about that recently. Rob Dies a Lot recently was almost a 3-hour podcast. Sometimes on the group show we can go a little bit longer with Rini from Pretzel Rocks.
Longer,
yeah. I am constantly battling myself because on a personal level, I want to talk for as long as possible. But as far as like a listenable podcast, at some point you gotta cut it. And that's the hardest part for me as a creator.
We always got to leave stuff for the next one.
This is true. Are there any final things that you wanted to touch on before we got into the Q&A?
No, I think we got the big ones.
Awesome. All right, first question comes from Big Shoe. Most memorable thing from streaming?
This is for me?
This is for you. It'll be for both of us, but I'll let you answer. For both of us.
I was rated by Tim the Tatman long time ago. Ended up being how I met Trevor May and Action Jackson, who, I'm now relatively close with and friends. Like Tim and I are, I would say we're acquaintance level. Like we try to, say hi and stuff at like conventions or whatever those things are anymore.
Well, what is a convention?
I did, because of that, I was able to do like a podcast with Trevor May, who's a pitcher for the Minnesota Twins, now the Mets, and just a streamer and great guy. Met a lot of really great friends there. And it was all based off of, I was, a sub 8 to 12 viewer streamer who I just put a ton of effort into the like production quality of my streams, and I was consistent, and it was like kind of like you always, we probably shouldn't go down the tangent of like, 50% of making it is luck sometimes, but like, the other 50% is putting yourself in as many situations as possible to be lucky. It was one of those moments where, that really kind of helped me understand more what I want to do and what I can make my personal brand around and what was eye-catching and stuff. So that was the most memorable moment, I think. Second to this one. Answering your question.
Shut your mouth. Oh, were you talking to Big Shoe about it? Not me, but the...
Oh, yeah, not you.
Okay.
Bottom 5. But Big Shoe's question, #1. My Tim the Tatman raid, #2.
Most memorable... I would say the first thing that always comes to my mind is doing the OBS fundraiser stream. I think that was at this point about 2 to 2.5 years ago. We raised like $2,400 in one day and donated all to the OBS project, and that was fucking massive. Not only was that my biggest single day fundraiser ever, but we met so many new people that are still around today. And I built a great relationship with Jim, the lead developer of OBS, and it was just all like on so many different levels was just extremely, extremely memorable. And I will always be thankful for that day.
Wow, real altruistic. Oh, I did good things for people. I'm
yeah, you like that?
A bunch of people came into my string and never came back, but they spammed my chat for a few hours.
I could probably think of a lot of those examples as well. Don't you worry. Oh yeah, I never saw those people again, like ever, but it was still fucking great.
They said that they would come back. They're like, I don't normally follow, but I really like you. I'll be back. Never came back.
Never again. Fucking streaming in general. Next question from Middle Age Stream. I have a hard time adjusting my EQ. What would you recommend for balancing EQ? I have a Go XLR in order to optimize quality. And he has he's got an RE320 as well.
So, small plug, I have a Go XLR EQ video that goes through every single band, talks about what you should be listening for and how to adjust it. However, if you've done that or it hasn't been helpful to you, in my Discord, we have a sound check me link, and you can post, basically you just post a 15-20 second clip of you talking and a screenshot of what your current EQ settings are. And then sometimes I respond immediately. Sometimes it's a day or two, but I'll go through and I'll actually be like, turn this thing up here, turn this, because it's really hard. The hard part is not knowing what each EQ does. It's number one, listening to it live in your headphones and making those changes accurate to what the end person is going to hear, because you're hearing all the bone conduction in your head of your voice, any sort of sound leakage from outside of your headphones. You're hearing all of that on top of what you're EQing. So you're technically not hearing yourself at a perfect 1-to-1 EQ. And that can be a little bit jarring for people. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is that most people aren't very good at perceiving the best and worst parts of their own voice. And it takes a level of honesty and a level of just consistency in changing your voice and like learning what sounds good and getting feedback from others and stuff to go, oh, that's great. For me, I always I would make a change to my EQ and I'd play Overwatch, and almost every day I would get someone go, wow, your voice sounds great. Are you on the radio? Do you do a podcast? And I was like, oh, I'm going to keep that change. And if I got someone and like that day I didn't get any, I'm like, oh, I think I need to change my EQ. Oh, I sound like yeah. So that would be my two things, is if like you haven't done like the basics yet of like just what do the bands do on the Go XLR and how do they affect my voice, start with the video, but then join my Discord if you want an extra level of help.
I'm just going to mirror that, because when people start asking me about the basics of EQ, I send them your Go XLR video. Even if they don't have a Go XLR, the basics of the frequencies is good base knowledge.
Yeah, it's technically, yeah. And so I think I have a video that's just like, EQ any mic. And it more talks about like because every compressor just about has a ratio, an attack, a release, a makeup gain, and a threshold. So it's like it doesn't technically matter that it's presented in forest green versus whatever else the compressor is that you have in OBS or something else.
Is it the video is called "Make Any Mic Sound Amazing" mic chain tutorial?
Yep.
All right, I'm gonna.
So that one's designed to be a little bit more agnostic from Go XLR.
Gotcha.
For the SEO.
Duh, I like it. Okay, I'm gonna throw that in chat as well. Blip. And if Middle Age Stream, I see him in chat, but I'll shoot him a DM with those as well, because I think they're valuable.
Thanks.
Alrighty. Last question. Would you rather have 10 hobbies or one passion? Also from Big Shoe.
One passion. It's hobbies. I find like I go in and out of hobbies often. I'm like, I want to be a YouTuber, and then I'm like, this is a lot of work. I can't even do a video every other week. It's and then I like spit out 4 in a week, and like, and it's because like I have this waning passion for those hobbies.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have a singular passion, you're going to be, in my opinion, I'm a lot better at like keeping consistent and being able to stay passionate about a passion than you are a hobby.
Sure.
Hobby is like something that, you can fall in love. You can fall out of love with a hobby, but it's really hard to fall out of love with a passion.
Absolutely. Yeah. To put that in perspective for me, I think that I have a lot of different hobbies, but really a lot of those hobbies just funnel back to a single passion that is technology. But like I just got, a 3D printer in the past couple months, and that thing, not only does that just take so much time to learn and to really tune, but I can only spend 1 to 2 hours a week, trying to learn and print that thing. And I actually, a low poly Bulbasaur just got done printing during the middle of the podcast. So I'm going to I'm going to reprint that, or I'm going to rip that thing off as soon as this podcast is done. But yeah, like I heavily enjoy woodworking and crafting and DIY and LEDs and Arduino controllers and all that shit. But there's only so much time for one of those things. And, it definitely helps when it comes to being a content creator to just hone in on the one thing. But half of that is letting go and stop making excuses for like, oh yeah, no, like I like so many different things that I can't choose one thing. When really like that's kind of what it takes to make it.
Yeah. And it's like, it's an unfortunate thing where you have to kind of like be okay with, to be really great at one thing. It means that you're kind of reconciling yourself to be mediocre at many other things.
Yep.
And it's finding the right balance that makes you the most happy. Like some people are like, I would rather be the best YouTuber in the world than to have a bunch of other things that make me happy on days YouTube doesn't make me happy.
It's a good way to put it.
But, for me, I love music. I was a studio musician, and I got to a point where I was on a road where I could have made that my living. And I decided I didn't want to. And if I did, it meant that I couldn't do the other things I love as much. And I just love the other things so much that, I'm like, I'm staying here at this level. I won't make it a career, but I can still sound pretty dang good. And then I can, do more stuff in gaming. Or like at that time I was really into podcasting, and I wanted to be a podcaster. And I'm like, how do I build that up and try to be, an accomplished musician? And like, there's just not enough time in the day. And, there's just kind of a balancing act for your attention that, try to find the right balance that makes you happiest.
I still have not figured that out. As of late, with focusing on just chatting content and the podcasting and tech, I've narrowed and niched myself a little bit more. I still love video games. Like I love playing video games, and it's one of my favorite pastimes. It's so much fun. And unfortunately, just chatting and tech focused content means a lot more time away from a lot of my friends, because like the reason I have the friends that I do is because of gaming. And that is definitely one of the hardest things to let go of. But friends are always there to game whenever there's free time. And that's kind of like the best part about gaming, is that it's always there in the background, and you can just hop into it and hop right back, at any time.
Yeah. If you want to suck.
Damn. Just fucking calling me out.
So what you're telling me is that you're not very good at video games.
This is true. I mean, it's why I quit playing Rocket League, because I couldn't dedicate the time to be good. And like every fucking time playing that game is just getting my shit pushed in, and now I don't play it as much anymore.
I find that with most games, it's like I'll only ever be like a plat player in anything I ever play.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that's just something I have to be okay with.
I agree, and that's
And
that was
not.
really hard for me. You said you're not.
And I'm still not.
Yeah, I'm not either.
Like I'm not okay. I'm like, I'm gonna find my game, and that's gonna be my Grandmaster game. I was like, no,
it's not happening, man. It's just not. And I still get I get sweaty when I play video games. When I play Call of Duty, when I play Rocket League, I'm a sweaty bastard. But I'm also okay with that. I like being good at video games.
Yeah, I think there was a meme I think one time that was on the internet where it's like, I'm good enough to not be able to play with all of my friends, but bad enough to not actually be good at the game. And like I feel like I'm perpetually in that state where it's like when I play with my friends, they're having so much fun getting just stomped in bronze and silver, and I'm like, I can't do that. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, where if I get a friend who's really good at the game and they're diamond masters or whatever and stuff, and I'm just dying every couple seconds, and I'm just like, I can't do this. It's
like
I need more perfectly mediocre friends.
Playing with a bunch of like casual players and you're having a great time. It's 11 p.m. You've thrown back a couple drinks, and then one of your friends says, "Hey, man, you want to play ranked?" Oh no, I don't know. I want to do that. It's limbo. It is rank limbo to be in between those two places.
Yeah. So.
All right, my dude. Well,
one passion.
Yeah, one passion, indeed. Fantastic fucking show. Shout out to Mother's Day. Thanks for coming back on the podcast and discussing all the things that we are passionate about. It's always good being able to sit down and talk with you. I love the insight and the knowledge that you bring to the table, and I love your ability to dumb it down to my level as well, because that's half the part of having a good conversation. Being able to understand.
It's hard to do. It's hard to bring it down
this low.
That low. Yeah.
Well, dude,
savage.
Take this opportunity to shout out anything you have coming up. Sell out. I would love to tell the people what you got going on right now.
Yeah. So, yeah, I do YouTube pretty infrequently, but I think when I do post, people tend to like them. I'm almost to 1,000 subscribers. I'm at like 940 right now, so I would appreciate the boost. That's youtube.com/KickedTripodYT. Follow me on Twitter at KickedTripod, at Instagram at KickedTripod. My Instagram is basically just post-workout stories for when, because I've been doing that this year, and that's been a ton of fun. One of those hobbies that'll never be a passion kind of thing. So I do that. If you want to kind of know more on what I'm working on full time, I can't say anything other than twitter.com/BEACN Beacon. You'll see updates there as we get closer to being able to wanting to share anything with you. At the moment, it's all crickets, and that's okay. I'll be very cryptic, and I'm happy to be very cryptic about it, but that's what I'm working on long term. And I think that's it. Shout out to my ma, who was in chat earlier. Thanks for stopping by, Mom. Love you. That
might have been the first time that a podcast guest mother has been in chat.
My mom, I don't call her enough. And she goes, I don't get to hear your voice enough, but I listen to all your shows, and I like whenever you're on a podcast or something, I go and I tune in there because it's just really nice to hear your voice. And I don't know what you're talking about, but I just like to hear your voice. He goes, your voice has changed a lot over the years. Because think of like how confident you are in front of a microphone now. Like I was never like this booming, controlling voice and comfortable talking to anybody in the real world. And now like I am very much more a public speaker, and I'm very comfortable doing that.
Okay.
And so she goes, I just like to hear your voice. So
damn. You know who never says that is my mom, because I call her often Jonathan. So now's the time to change. Don't worry, Mom. I'm going to get him on the right
my
path.
mom watching your shows either.
That's okay. That's fair. That's very, very fair.
Just got to show her the clown once, and
I don't see a clown. You see a clown? It's gone.
What?
The clown isn't there. You can't see because you're on a different webcam, but there's no more clown. Oh wait, he's back
right there.
God
he's
damn it.
literally right
okay
there.
Listen, I forgot
on
that
both camera angles. I had to check the stream. I'm like, am I just dumb? I'm like, no, it's right freaking there.
I forgot he was back there. All right. Rocks and Hot Pockets, episode 149. That's a wrap. Thank you, everybody, for coming through and hanging out with us. KickedTripod. Always good to see you, man. Thanks for coming on the show. And we will absolutely have you back sometime soon.
Let's do it.
All right. See you guys. Goodbye.